Victor, a man from a distant country called Krakosia, arrives in the United States for a visit. Despite speaking a completely different language, he's eager to explore the country. However, his excitement quickly turns to confusion when he's escorted by police officers who are trying to figure out the purpose of his trip. They can't communicate because of the language barrier, and things only get more complicated. It's not long before Victor meets Frank, the director of customs. Over lunch, Frank tries to explain the situation to Victor. He tells him that Krakosia has recently gone through a crisis, leading to the collapse of its government. As a result, Victor's passport is no longer valid, and travel to the United States is prohibited. Frank explains that the new government in Krakosia isn't recognized, which means Victor is considered a citizen of nowhere, or, in simpler terms, an unacceptable citizen. Unfortunately, Victor doesn't understand any of this. Despite Frank's best efforts, the language barrier makes it impossible for them to communicate. Victor is then sent to the airport's international transit area, with orders not to leave until his immigration status is sorted out. If he does leave, he could face arrest. The officers give him food vouchers because Krakosian currency is useless in the US. They also give him a phone card, but Victor, unfamiliar with how to use a phone in the US, struggles to make sense of it. He asks people for help, but no one stops to assist him. Soon after, Victor tries to help a woman who can't close her suitcase, but his attempt ends up breaking the luggage. To make matters worse, a cleaning man named Gupta mistakenly picks up his food vouchers, which fell to the floor, and throws them away. When Victor tries to retrieve them from the trash, the language barrier prevents him from explaining the situation. Hours go by, and as night falls, Victor continues to wander the airport, unsure of what to do next. Eventually, he finds an abandoned room where he tries to sleep, but the uncomfortable chairs make it nearly impossible. In the middle of the night, a plane lands nearby, and Victor wakes up frightened, thinking it's the police. The next day, Frank receives the news that he's the front runner to replace his boss when he retires. However, he's also warned that inspectors will be monitoring his performance closely. While Frank is dealing with this news, the security cameras catch Victor wandering the airport in a bathrobe, trying to take a shower in the restroom. Victor goes to immigration and tries to make sense of the complex procedures to gain entry into the US. Although it's difficult for him to understand at first, he eventually figures out what documents and information he needs. However, the conflict in his country hasn't been resolved, and Officer Torres tells him that he wasted the whole day because he is still considered unacceptable. Frank is surprised by how well Victor is following the rules. Despite being told not to leave the airport, Victor has stayed put, waiting for his status to be resolved. Frank, eager to prevent Victor from causing any more trouble, plans to do something about it. As time goes by, Victor grows hungry, but without money or food vouchers, he's left to scavenge. He takes some crackers and dressing from the trash. Later, Frank approaches him and tells him that at 12 noon, the airport gates will be open with no security, allowing him to leave without any issues. But Frank has a trick up his sleeve. He plans to have Victor arrested once he tries to leave. At noon, Frank watches through the security cameras as Victor approaches the exit doors. But Victor stops in his tracks when he notices the camera is following him. Instead of leaving, he helps a stewardess who slips and falls on the wet floor. But in the process, he's knocked over by another man. To his surprise, the stewardess passionately kisses the man she meets afterward. Meanwhile, Gupta talks to his colleagues, saying that Victor is a CIA agent and is trying to spy on them. His co-workers don't take him seriously, though. Victor, still hungry, continues to search for food. He discovers a machine at the airport that gives coins when luggage carts are returned. He starts collecting carts, exchanging them for coins and using the money to buy food. As the days pass, Victor learns to read English using the money he earns by returning more carts. He spends time in the airport watching the news about his home country, but it's all in English, so he decides to buy books to help him learn the language. His understanding of English improves, and he starts reading reports from his friends back home. Victor returns to immigration one day, and Officer Torres recognizes him. She's surprised when she sees him, and even though she's preparing to reject him, there's a noticeable shift in their dynamic. The atmosphere between them has become friendlier. Victor continues to return carts to make more money, but Frank announces that a new person has been hired to take over the cart returning job. This means Victor can no longer earn money to buy food. Desperate, Victor decides to walk through the airport doors even though it's against the rules. Enrique, a man in red overalls, watches Victor from a distance, and soon, Victor is back to eating crackers from the trash. Just as he's doing so, the stewardess he helped earlier greets him with excitement. However, she's not looking for him. She's searching for the man who was with her earlier. As Victor stands up, the man trips him, causing him to lose his food. Frustrated, Victor tries to clean up the mess, but Gupta becomes angry, thinking that Victor is stealing his job. As evening falls, Victor returns to the abandoned room where he sleeps, and to his surprise, R, a man who works in the food area, offers him a deal. R wants Victor to gather information on Officer Torres, as he's secretly in love with her. Victor agrees to help, and over the following days, he gathers information for R in exchange for food. The situation becomes more manageable for Victor, as food is no longer a concern. Eventually, Frank tells Victor that he could be allowed to enter the country if he applies for refugee status. The only requirement is that he must claim to be afraid to return to Krakosia. However, Victor is reluctant. He doesn't want to make such a claim. Victor, a man from a country in turmoil, finds himself stranded in an airport with no way to enter the United States. Although he prefers to stay quiet about his country's situation, he eventually overhears a heated argument between a flight attendant and her boyfriend. To Victor's surprise, the flight attendant is the other woman, and the man she is arguing with is married. Victor, pretending his phone is broken, approaches her and offers help, starting a conversation. He tells her his flight is delayed and that he's a contractor, which she finds amusing. When she invites him to dinner, he declines. He has no money and doesn't want her to think he's just interested in a casual fling. He then decides to search for work in the airport shops to make enough money for dinner. But his efforts are in vain. The workers laugh at him except for one man who asks for his phone to make a call. Victor waits for hours until the store manager finally calls to inform him that they hired someone else. Undeterred, Victor wanders into an area of the airport under construction and spends the entire night working. By dawn, he has remodeled a wall, and the workers, impressed with his craftsmanship, offer him a job. As time goes by, Victor starts to fit in with the airport crew, even getting invited to play cards with Enrique, Gupta, and the baggage man. Although the old man is initially distrustful of him, he eventually warms up, and they enjoy gambling with unclaimed lost items. One day, Victor bumps into Amelia, the flight attendant, in a bookstore. For the second time, she invites him out, and this time, Victor agrees. Things seem to be going well, but there's a twist. Frank, the head of customs, finds out that Victor is making more money than him at his new job. Furious, Frank tries to have Victor imprisoned but fails. Instead, he locks him in an airport cell ahead of an FBI inspection, hoping to control the situation. However, when a passenger traveling with unlicensed drugs causes a scene, Frank asks Victor to act as a translator, since the passenger speaks the same language as Victor. Victor helps, lying to ensure the passenger isn't arrested. He tells Frank that the drugs are for the man's cat, not his father, which saves the man from deportation. Frank, suspicious of Victor's actions, begins to treat him poorly. But word of Victor's quick thinking spreads among the airport workers, and they start to admire him. Victor, wanting to make peace with Frank, visits his office with a gift and asks him for help to fulfill a promise. He explains that he wants to get to New York, but Frank, still resentful, refuses to help. However, the airport workers, including Gupta, offer to help Victor smuggle himself out in a suitcase. Victor, instead, asks them for help in finding out Amelia's return date, and he buys a nice suit to impress her. The day Amelia returns, Victor waits for her, and Gupta shares a personal story about his past in India, revealing that he cannot return home because he once stabbed a corrupt policeman. When Amelia lands, Victor and his friends guide her to him. He invites her to dinner, and they create a makeshift restaurant on the airport terrace, with everyone playing the roles of chefs and waiters. During dinner, Victor admits that he lives in the airport, but Amelia brushes it off, assuming he's referring to his frequent travels. The evening goes well, and they arrange to meet again. Soon after, Victor starts working on a secret plan, while Enrique asks him for a favor. Enrique wants to send a ring to Officer Torres, whom he has feelings for, and Victor agrees to deliver it. The ring leads to a wedding in the airport chapel, where Victor catches the bride's bouquet. A few days later, Frank, curious about why Amelia likes Victor, confronts her. She responds that a man with his intelligence is difficult to understand. Frank then reveals the truth about Victor, which causes Amelia to seek him out. She confronts him, accusing him of lying, and also tells him she has broken up with her lover. In an attempt to win her back, Victor shows Amelia a gift he made for her, inspired by Napoleon's famous gifts to Josephine. He also shares a deeply personal story about his father's passion for jazz music. Victor had promised his father to collect autographs from every member of a jazz band, and after 40 years, His father passed away before getting the final autograph. Moved by his story, Amelia kisses him, but when Victor asks her to accompany him to New York to fulfill his father's last wish, she reveals that she is back with her lover. Though heartbroken, Victor receives news that his country's war is over, and his friends throw a party in his honor. Amelia also grants him an emergency travel visa for a day so he can fulfill his promise. However, when Victor tries to join her, she leaves with her lover. With his visa in hand, Victor goes to Frank for help, but Frank, preparing for a promotion, refuses to authorize it. He threatens to fire Victor's friends and deport Gupta. Victor is left with no choice but to say goodbye to his friends. Gupta, frustrated, refuses to accept defeat, and one of the officers reveals a plan to help Victor fulfill his promise. Gupta orchestrates a situation where he commits an infraction, allowing Victor to leave the airport without Frank's interference. As Victor heads out, the airport workers gather to bid him farewell, showering him with gifts. Frank tries to stop him, but the officer who had supported him earlier helps Victor escape. As Victor steps outside into the city, he catches a glimpse of Amelia. She simply smiles and says goodbye. He takes a cab to the jazz performance, finally meeting the musician and receiving the autograph his father had longed for. Satisfied, Victor gets back into the cab, ready to return home, having fulfilled his promise at last. And I promise you that the next movie recaps will be interesting as well. Just click on my recommendations on the right to check them out. Don't forget to subscribe to be informed about new releases. As always, grab your popcorn, enjoy yourself, and see you soon, my friend.